You promised yourself this time would be different. You had the plan, the motivation, the energy, and for a little while, it actually felt real. But here you are again. Same life, same habits, same quiet feeling that something is slipping through your fingers. So let me ask you something honestly. What if the problem was never your effort? What if it was never your willpower, your mindset, or even your goals? What if everything you were taught about change was wrong? Because there is a completely different way to think about this. And once you see it, you will never look at your daily life the same way again. This is Atomic Habits. Let's talk about something we don't say out loud enough. Most of us are not where we thought we'd be by now. You had a version of yourself who was more focused, more disciplined, more alive. Someone who worked out consistently, read every day, saved money without guilt, and showed up with energy instead of exhaustion. And the frustrating part is, you've tried. You've downloaded the apps, watched the productivity videos, bought the journals, started the morning routines, set the big goals, made the lists, felt the inspiration. And yet somehow, months later, the old patterns creep back in. The snooze button wins, the junk food wins, the distraction wins. And you're left with that quiet, familiar feeling, a mix of disappointment and something that almost feels like shame. Here's the thing, though, that's not a character flaw. That's not weakness. And it is absolutely not destiny. It's a systems problem. And James Clear's Atomic Habits is the most precise, practical, and genuinely life-changing book ever written about solving it. This isn't motivational fluff. There are no vague affirmations here, no screaming at you to want it more. This is a deep, clear, psychologically grounded blueprint for how human behavior actually works, and how you can use that understanding to redesign your life from the inside out. Today, we're going to break down every major idea in this book, expanded, illustrated, and translated into the language of your real everyday life. By the time this video ends, you won't just feel inspired. You will understand exactly why you've been stuck and precisely what to do about it. Let's begin. Act 1. The real problem. Why you keep failing despite trying so hard. Imagine it's 11:47 p.m., you're lying in bed, the room is dark, your phone is in your hand, screen glowing, and you're scrolling through something you won't even remember tomorrow morning. You told yourself tonight would be different. You said you'd sleep by 10, wake up early, hit the gym before work, start the day strong instead of scrambling. But here you are, again. And the worst part isn't the late night. The worst part is that you already know what's going to happen next. The alarm goes off at 6, you hit snooze, and then the day rushes at you before you've had a single moment to yourself. You feel behind, you feel reactive. And somewhere around noon, the guilt kicks in, quiet, persistent, like background noise you can never quite turn off. Why do I keep doing this to myself? That question is one of the most honest questions a person can ask. And yet most people answer it wrong. They say, I need more discipline. I need to want it more. I just need to stop being lazy. But here's the thing. That diagnosis is almost never correct, and more importantly, it's not useful. Because blaming yourself for a systems problem is like blaming water for not flowing uphill. James Clear opens Atomic Habits with an idea that sounds simple but cuts straight to the core of why people stay stuck for years. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Read that again slowly, because it changes everything about how you think about change. Most of us are goal-obsessed. We set big, ambitious targets, lose 20 pounds, make more money, build a business, get fit, learn a skill, travel more, be happier. Goals are easy to set. They feel good in the moment. There's this rush of clarity and possibility when you write them down. You feel like you've already done something, when in reality you've just described the destination. And that's the trap, because a goal with no system is just a wish with a deadline. Think about it this way. Two people want to run a marathon. One of them sets the goal and then relies on motivation to drag them to their sneakers every morning. The other builds a system, a specific time to run, a route already mapped, a friend who holds them accountable, a playlist ready to go. When motivation fades, and it always fades, the first person stops, the second person keeps going, same goal, completely different outcomes, because they had different systems. But here's something even more counterintuitive about goals, and this is the part that makes most people genuinely uncomfortable. If you achieve your goal, you only get to feel good temporarily, because the feeling of achievement fades. And unless you've built the system underneath it, you often slide right back to where you were. We've all seen it. Someone loses 30 pounds through sheer force of will, extreme diet, brutal workouts, and then a year later the weight is back. Not because they're weak, but because they fixed the outcome without fixing the system that created it. Goals set a direction, systems determine progress. And if your system is broken, your goals are torture, constant reminders of where you aren't rather than engines that move you forward. So the shift, the foundational, everything changes shift, is this. Stop obsessing over the result, start building the process. But here's what makes this even harder than it sounds. Because humans are not wired to value invisible progress. And that leads us to one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of self-improvement, the concept that James Clear calls the plateau of latent potential, and this is where most people give up, right before their breakthrough. Act 2. The Ice Cube Lesson. Why progress is invisible before it's undeniable. Picture a room. The temperature inside is 25 degrees Fahrenheit. In the middle of the room, sitting on a table, is an ice cube. Now someone slowly starts raising the temperature. 26 degrees, nothing. 27 degrees, nothing. 28 degrees, still nothing. 29 degrees, still nothing. The ice cube just sits there, completely unchanged, giving zero visual evidence that anything is happening. Then, 32 degrees, the ice melts. Now, here's the question. Which degree caused the transformation? Most people instinctively say 32. That's the one that made it happen. That's the one that finally produced a result. But that's wrong. Every single degree contributed to that moment. Every degree that came before was necessary. The change didn't begin at 32, it just became visible at 32. This is what James Clear calls the plateau of latent potential, and it's the reason so many genuinely dedicated, hardworking people quit right before their life was about to change. Because progress is almost always invisible before it becomes undeniable. You go to the gym for 3 weeks, you look in the mirror, nothing. You're eating better, sleeping more, drinking more water. You get on the scale, same number. You think, maybe this just doesn't work for me. You start reading 10 pages every day, a month passes. You don't feel smarter, you're not having breakthrough insights. You think, I'm wasting my time. You put aside money every week. Not a lot, but consistently. 6 months pass. You're not rich, you're barely different. You think, what's the point? And so you stop. Right there, at 29 degrees, 1 degree before everything starts to change. This is not a motivational metaphor, this is literally how compound growth works. And it applies to skills, to health, to relationships, to wealth, to every meaningful area of human life. The comedian Jerry Seinfeld, one of the most successful comedians of all time, had a simple system when he was starting out. Every day he wrote jokes, he would put a red X on his calendar, just one X. The goal was simple, don't break the chain. He didn't focus on whether the jokes were good, he didn't obsess over whether he was getting better, he just focused on showing up every single day. And the X's on the calendar became both proof and motivation. What Seinfeld understood intuitively is something James Clear explains precisely. The difference between being in motion and taking action. Being in motion feels like progress. Researching, planning, preparing, optimizing. Thinking about how you're going to do the thing. Taking action is the thing. Writing, running, calling, creating. Motion is not bad, but motion alone never produces results. Only action does. And here is the most important thing about that distinction. The more you act, the more you just show up and do the thing, even imperfectly, even when you don't feel like it, the more that action becomes automatic. It stops feeling like a decision you have to make and starts feeling like just what you do. That's the compound effect. That's what most people don't respect. Because we live in a world that celebrates overnight transformations, the dramatic before and after, the viral glow-up, the 6-week challenge results. But real, durable change doesn't look like a montage. It looks boring, repetitive, unremarkable. Until suddenly, it isn't. One more workout doesn't change your body, but 1,000 might. One more page doesn't make you smarter, but 1,000 might. One more dollar doesn't make you wealthy, but 1,000 invested 1,000 times might. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. And just like financial compound interest, the real power isn't in any single deposit. It's in the consistency over time and the willingness to keep going when you can't yet see the results. But even understanding the power of consistency, is not the deepest truth about habits. Because the most powerful thing a habit does is not the result it produces, it's the identity it builds, and this is where everything truly changes. Act 3. The Identity Shift. Why habits are about who you're becoming, not what you're achieving. Here is a scenario. 2 people are both trying to quit smoking. Someone offers each of them a cigarette. The first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." The second person says, "No thanks, I don't smoke." Same action, same outcome in that moment. But notice the difference in the language. The first person is still at war with themselves. They want the cigarette, they're resisting, they're trying. The second person has already resolved the conflict. There is no cigarette to resist because they're not a smoker. The cigarette isn't even tempting because it doesn't align with who they are. One is changing behavior, the other has changed identity. And that difference, that single shift in how someone defines themselves, is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. James Clear calls this identity-based habits, and it reframes the entire project of self-improvement. Most people think about change from the outside in. They focus on outcomes. I want to lose weight. I want to make more money. I want to be more confident. These are external results, things you want to have or achieve. Some people go one level deeper. They think about process. I need to exercise more. I need to save money. I need to practice speaking up. These are behaviors, things you need to do. But the deepest level, the level that actually makes lasting change possible, is identity. Not what you want to have, not what you need to do, but who you are. I am someone who takes care of their body. I am someone who builds financial security. I am someone who speaks with confidence. When your behavior flows from your identity, it doesn't feel like discipline. It feels like authenticity. You're not forcing yourself to do something against your nature. You're acting in alignment with who you are. Now here's where it gets genuinely profound. You might be thinking, okay, but how do you change your identity? I can't just decide to believe something different about myself. And you're right, you can't just declare a new identity and have it stick. But here's the thing. You don't build identity through declarations. You build it through evidence. Every action you take, no matter how small, is a vote for the type of person you believe you are. When you wake up before your alarm and go for a walk, you cast a vote for, I am someone who keeps commitments to myself. When you skip a meal at a fast food drive-thru and choose something better, you cast a vote for, I am someone who respects my body. When you sit down and write for 20 minutes, even when you don't feel like it, you cast a vote for, I am a writer. No single vote wins the election, but over time votes accumulate, evidence accumulates, and slowly the belief shifts. Not because you forced it, but because you earned it. This is why small habits matter so much. Not because the individual action is significant, but because every small action is a piece of proof, and your brain is always watching, always building a case for who you are. Which means the opposite is also true. Every time you break a promise to yourself, even a small one, you cast a vote in the other direction. I am someone who can't follow through. I am someone who gives up. I am someone who doesn't change. This isn't about guilt, it's about awareness. Because now every habit is no longer just a behavior, it's a vote, it's evidence, it's identity in motion. So the question to ask yourself is not, how do I achieve this goal? The question is, what would the person I want to become do in this situation? And then do that, not perfectly, not dramatically, just consistently. Because every repetition is a vote. Every vote shapes belief. And belief, accumulated and reinforced over time, becomes identity. And when your identity changes, your behavior changes automatically. Not because you're forcing yourself, because you're just being who you are. That shift is everything. But there is a force that works against identity change, silently, powerfully, almost invisibly. And most people never see it operating on them. It's not lack of motivation, it's not lack of knowledge, it's your environment. And understanding this changes how you think about discipline entirely. Act 4. Your environment is the architect, why willpower loses and design wins. Let's be honest about something. You have probably lost a fight to your phone that you didn't even know you were having. You sit down to work on something important, something that actually matters. You've got the intention, the plan, maybe even some initial momentum, and then, without any deliberate decision, your hand reaches for your phone. You check a notification, you open an app, you scroll for a minute. Except it's not a minute, it's 15, and now your focus is broken, your momentum is gone, and you're left wondering what just happened. Was that a failure of willpower? No, it was a failure of design. Because the phone was right there. It was visible, it was accessible, it was the easiest thing in your immediate environment to reach for, and your brain, which is always looking for the path of least resistance, took it. This is one of the most important but least glamorous insights in all of Atomic Habits. Your environment shapes your behavior far more than your intentions do. We like to think of ourselves as rational agents, people who make deliberate choices based on clear thinking and strong values. But the truth is, most of our behavior is not deliberate at all. It's reactive. It's a response to what's around us. Anne Thorndike, a physician at Massachusetts General Hospital, ran an experiment. Without saying a word to anyone, without any signs or education campaigns, she simply changed what was available at the hospital cafeteria. Water bottles were placed at every checkout. Soda was moved to less accessible locations. The food environment was subtly redesigned. The result? Soda sales dropped 11%, water sales went up 25%. Nobody was lectured, nobody was told to make better choices, the environment changed, and behavior followed automatically. This is the invisible power of environment design. And James Clear's principle is this: the best way to build good habits is to make them the obvious, easy default choice. The best way to break bad habits is to make them invisible and difficult. Think about what this means practically. You want to eat healthier. Don't rely on willpower to resist the chips in the cabinet. Don't put the chips in the cabinet. Put the fruit on the counter. Visible, accessible, easy. When you walk into your kitchen and you see an apple at eye level, you're more likely to eat it. Not because you made a decision, because it was there. You want to read more. Don't rely on motivation to choose a book over your phone before bed. Put the book on your pillow in the morning. When you get into bed at night, it's right there waiting for you. Friction eliminated, habit enabled. You want to exercise more. Don't wait until morning to decide you're going to work out. Lay your clothes out the night before. Put your sneakers by the door. Make the first decision, the decision to go, as easy as possible. Because when you wake up and everything is ready, the question changes from, am I going to work out, to, I guess I'm working out. James Clear introduces a concept called environment design that completely reframes the willpower conversation. Willpower is finite. It's a resource that depletes throughout the day. Every decision you make, even trivial ones, costs a little bit of willpower. By the time you're tired and stressed and facing temptation, you've often already used most of it up. But environment is not finite. Environment doesn't get tired. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't make exceptions when you're stressed. It just sits there, constantly nudging your behavior in whatever direction it's designed for. So the most disciplined people in the world are not the ones who white-knuckle their way through temptation every day. They're the ones who have arranged their lives so they face less temptation to begin with. They're not stronger, they're smarter designers. This insight also explains why change is so difficult when your environment stays the same. If you want to change your habits, but you keep living in the same space, surrounding yourself with the same people, following the same daily routes, you're fighting uphill constantly. The environment keeps pulling you back toward the old behavior because it was designed for the old behavior. One of the most powerful moves you can make when trying to build a new habit is to create a new context for it. New place, new behavior. This is why people find it easier to make big changes when they move to a new city, start a new job, or begin a new relationship. The old context, with all its cues for old behaviors, is gone. There's space for new patterns to form, but you don't need to move across the country. You can create micro-environments. Use your desk only for work. Use the couch only for relaxing. Use the kitchen table only for eating. When every space has a clear purpose, your brain begins to associate that context with that behavior, and the behavior becomes automatic in that space. Your phone is in your bedroom has become a place associated with distraction. Move it to the living room, charge it across the house, create physical distance between you and the cue, redesign the space, redesign the behavior, and this leads us to the most practical, actionable framework in the entire book. The system that turns all of this psychology into something you can actually implement today. The 4 laws of behavior change. This is where habits stop being theory and become engineering. Act 5. The 4 laws of behavior change. The practical architecture of every habit you will ever build. Every habit, every single one, follows the same 4-step cycle. Cue, craving, response, reward. You see your phone, cue. You feel the pull of curiosity or boredom, craving. You pick it up and scroll, response. You feel a momentary hit of novelty or entertainment, reward. That cycle just ran in about 3 seconds, and it will run again in another 3 seconds, and again and again. Until that cycle is so deep in your neural pathways that it's essentially automatic. The 4 laws James Clear builds from this cycle are brilliantly simple. To build a good habit, you apply them forward. To break a bad one, you invert them. Let's go through each one, not just as principles, but as real, concrete strategies you can implement in your actual life. Law 1. Make it obvious. Your brain is wired to respond to what it sees. Visibility is behavior. If something is in your field of vision, you're more likely to engage with it. If it's hidden, you're more likely to forget it exists. This is why the most important first step in any new habit is making it impossible to ignore. James Clear introduces a technique called implementation intention. Most people set vague intentions. I'll work out more. I'll read before bed. I'll start saving money. Vague intentions produce vague results. An implementation intention is specific. I will behavior at time in location. I will go for a 30-minute run at 7 a.m. in my neighborhood every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I will read for 20 minutes at 9:30 p.m. in the chair by the window. I will transfer $50 to my savings account every Friday at noon. The specificity matters enormously. When you define exactly when and where you will do something, your brain starts treating it like an appointment, a commitment, rather than a vague aspiration. Research shows that people who use implementation intentions are significantly more likely to follow through on their goals than those who rely on motivation alone. The research on voting behavior, for example, found that simply asking people, when will you vote, where, how will you get there, dramatically increased voter turnout. You're not trying to want it more, you're making it easier to remember and start. There's another tool in this law, the habit scorecard. Before you can change your habits, you need to see them clearly. Take a sheet of paper and write down everything you do in a day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. Every habit, every routine, every automatic behavior. Then mark each one, positive habit, negative habit, neutral habit. Most people have never done this. And when they do it for the first time, they're often shocked, not by the bad habits they find, but by the sheer number of unconscious behaviors they were completely unaware of. Awareness is the beginning of change. Law 2. Make it attractive. Your brain runs on dopamine, and dopamine, that chemical signal associated with pleasure and anticipation, is what drives you towards certain behaviors and away from others. Here's the fascinating thing about dopamine. It doesn't spike when you get the reward. It spikes in anticipation of the reward. When you see the notification on your phone and feel that little pull of curiosity, that's dopamine, before you've even opened the app. This is why bad habits are so insidiously attractive. They're engineered to trigger anticipation. Social media platforms spend billions of dollars designing their products to maximize that dopamine loop. They're not selling entertainment. They're selling the feeling of potential reward, the next post, the next like, the next notification. To make good habits stick, you need to make them feel attractive too. Not equally as engineered as a social media app, but emotionally appealing enough that your brain doesn't treat them like punishment. One of the most effective techniques for this is temptation bundling. Simple concept. Pair a habit you need to do with something you genuinely enjoy. Only listen to your favorite podcast while you're running or at the gym. Only watch that series you're hooked on while folding laundry or doing dishes. Only let yourself browse your favorite websites after you've completed a focused work session. Suddenly, the gym isn't just exercise. It's the only time you get to listen to that story. The laundry isn't drudgery, it's your showtime. You've made the necessary habit attractive by attaching it to genuine pleasure. There's another dimension to this law that is easy to overlook: your social environment. Humans are deeply social animals. We are wired to observe and imitate the behavior of the people around us, especially people we admire and respect. If everyone in your circle orders dessert, you probably will too. If everyone in your environment exercises regularly, it starts to feel like the normal thing to do. Behavior is contagious not by conscious copying, but by social gravity. This is why one of the most powerful things you can do for your habits is to join a group where the desired behavior is the default. Find the running club, the book group, the community of people who are building what you want to build. When your behavior aligns with your group's norms, the habit becomes attractive because belonging to the group requires it. Law 3. Make it easy. This law is the one people underestimate most, and yet it might be the most powerful of all. We like to believe that we act on logic, that if a behavior is beneficial, we'll do it. If it's harmful, we'll stop. If we understand something intellectually, we'll apply it. But behavior doesn't work that way. Behavior follows friction. The easier an action is, the more likely we are to do it. The harder it is, the more likely we are to avoid it, even if we know it's good for us. Consider this. People who live within half a mile of a gym go to the gym far more than people who live 2 miles away. Not because they're more motivated, because it's easier, the friction is lower. James Clear references a law known as the cardinal rule of behavior change. Behaviors that are immediately rewarding get repeated. Behaviors that are immediately punishing get avoided. And in the friction equation, effort is a form of punishment. It's not dramatic, it's not pain, but it is resistance. And resistance accumulated over time kills habits. So the strategy is ruthless friction reduction. The 2-minute rule is one of the most deceptively simple ideas in the book. When starting a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Read for an hour becomes read 1 page. Workout for 45 minutes becomes put on my workout clothes. Meditate daily becomes sit down and take 3 deep breaths. This seems almost laughably small, but that's the point. The 2-minute version is a gateway. Once you put on the shoes and walk outside, you often just go ahead and run. Once you open the book and read 1 page, you often keep going. Once you sit down and take those 3 breaths, the meditation happens. The hardest part of any habit is starting, and the 2-minute rule eliminates that hurdle. Beyond the 2-minute rule, the law of ease is about reducing setup time, eliminating friction, and automating as much of the decision-making process as possible. Meal prep on Sunday so healthy eating is easy all week. Sleep in your workout clothes if you exercise in the morning. Use automatic transfers for saving money so the decision is made once, not every paycheck. Reduce friction for good habits, increase friction for bad ones. Delete the apps that steal your attention. Use a website blocker during work hours. Keep your phone in a different room during meals. If the bad habit requires extra steps to access, you give yourself a moment, a gap between impulse and action, where choice is possible, and that gap is where change lives. Here's your first tiny habit of the day. Hit like and subscribe right now. One small action, 2 seconds, that's it. Consider it your first atomic habit. All right, now let's talk about the fourth law. Law 4, make it satisfying. This is the final law, and it closes the loop. Your brain repeats what it finds rewarding. It avoids what it finds punishing. This is not philosophy, it's neuroscience. The behaviors your brain associates with positive feelings get reinforced. The ones associated with neutral or negative feelings get pruned. The challenge with good habits is this: the rewards are often delayed. The benefit of eating well today shows up months later. The benefit of exercising consistently shows up over years. The benefit of saving money now shows up in decades. But your brain doesn't weight future rewards very heavily. It's wired for the immediate. This is called temporal discounting. The further away a reward is, the less it influences your behavior right now. Bad habits solve this perfectly. They're engineered for immediate reward. The junk food tastes good now. The social media hit happens now. The Netflix episode is satisfying now. The problem comes later. But your brain doesn't care about later as much as it cares about now. So to make good habits stick, you need to add some form of immediate reward. Tracking is one of the most powerful ways to do this, not because the data is particularly useful in the short term, but because checking something off, crossing out a day on the calendar, updating a habit tracker, seeing a streak continue, is immediately satisfying. It gives your brain a small hit of completion, of progress, of accomplishment. James Clear talks about habit tracking in terms of a don't break the chain mentality. The chain itself, see, the visible evidence of consistency, becomes motivating. You start protecting the streak not because of the underlying habit, but because breaking the chain feels bad. That feeling of loss, that's the immediate reward system working in your favor for once. The golden rule here is simple: never miss twice. You will miss days. That's not failure. Missing one day is an accident. Missing 2 days is the beginning of a new habit, the habit of not doing the thing. So the rule is this: no matter what, get back on the chain the next day. Even if the response is dramatically scaled down, even if it's the 2-minute version, even if it's barely a whisper of the habit. Because missing once means nothing. Missing twice means everything. These 4 laws, obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying, are not separate strategies. They're a unified system. Each law addresses a different point of failure in the habit cycle. If a habit isn't sticking, you can diagnose it against the 4 laws. Is it not obvious enough? Create a cue. Use implementation intention. Is it not attractive? Bundle it with pleasure. Change your environment. Is it not easy? Reduce the friction. Apply the 2-minute rule. Is it not satisfying? Add immediate reward. Track your progress. This is the architecture of behavior change, not inspiration, not willpower, design. But there's one more layer, one more strategy that takes all of these laws and supercharges them. It's called habit stacking, and it's one of the most elegantly simple ideas in the entire book. Axis 6, Habit. Stacking and the Freedom Paradox. How consistency becomes automatic and why routines set you free. Here's something interesting about your brain. You already have dozens, possibly hundreds of deeply ingrained habits. You just don't think of them as habits because they happen automatically. You wake up and go to the bathroom, automatic. You make coffee, automatic. You sit in the same spot, automatic. You check your phone within minutes of waking up, automatic. You drive the same route to work without thinking, automatic. These are neural pathways so deeply carved that they run without any conscious input. They don't require motivation. They don't require decisions. They just happen because that's what comes next. Now, here's the brilliant insight at the heart of habit stacking. What if you use those existing automatic behaviors as the foundation for new habits? The formula is elegant. After current habit, I will new habit. After I pour my morning coffee, I will write in my journal for 5 minutes. After I sit down at my desk, I will identify the 3 most important tasks for the day. After I brush my teeth at night, I will read for 15 minutes. After I park my car at work, I will take 3 deep breaths and set an intention for the meeting ahead. The existing habit is the anchor. The new behavior gets attached to it. You're not finding a new time and place for the new habit. You're inserting it into infrastructure that already exists in your brain. You're using the neural pathway of the old habit as a launch pad for the new one. This dramatically reduces the decision-making overhead of new habits. You don't have to remember to do it. The old habit reminds you automatically. You don't have to decide when. The trigger is built in. You don't have to find the energy to start. The momentum of the existing routine carries you there. Habit stacking turns isolated behaviors into integrated systems. You can build an entire morning routine this way, not as a rigid, exhausting checklist, but as a flowing sequence of small behaviors, each one triggering the next. Wake up, make coffee, journal, review goals, exercise, shower, eat. Each step activating the next, almost like dominoes falling in sequence. But there's something deeper here that's worth sitting with. People often think of routines as restrictions, as if having a schedule means less freedom, as if building habits means giving something up. James Clear addresses this head-on with an idea he calls the freedom paradox. The conventional wisdom says that discipline is the opposite of freedom, that structure constrains, that habits are for rigid, boring people who don't know how to enjoy life, but spend time with the most creative, productive, free-feeling people you know, and you'll almost always find structure underneath. They're not scattered, they're not reactive. They're not spending their days making endless small decisions about when to eat, when to work, when to exercise, when to rest. Those decisions are already made. The habits handle them. And because the habits handle them, the person is free. Free to think deeply, free to be present, free to take risks, to create, to engage fully with the things that actually matter. Warren Buffett is famously selective about what he says yes to so he can protect deep time for reading and thinking. His discipline around attention is what creates the freedom to think clearly. World-class athletes have rigid training schedules, not because they're robots, but because automating the process frees up mental energy for performance. Writers who publish consistently, almost universally, have a writing time, a slot where writing just happens, regardless of inspiration, regardless of mood. The paradox is real. Structure creates freedom. Bad habits are the actual prison. Impulsive, chaotic behavior, driven by whatever feels good in the moment, leaves you exhausted, reactive, and feeling out of control. Conscious, intentional habits, built deliberately, stacked systematically, aligned with who you want to become, create the kind of life where you're actually directing the story instead of just reacting to it, but none of this is possible without confronting the perfectionism trap. Because this is where most people quietly undermine everything they've built. They miss a day. And because they missed a day, they feel like they've failed. And because they feel like they've failed, they don't show up the next day, and then the next, and before long the habit is gone. James Clear's response to this is one of the most quietly powerful ideas in the book. Never miss twice, not be perfect, not never fail, just when you miss, come back immediately. One missed workout doesn't make you unhealthy. One bad meal doesn't make you unhealthy. One day of zero productivity doesn't make you unproductive. What makes you those things is the pattern of missing, not the individual miss. The people who build lasting habits are not the ones who never fall. They're the ones who fall and get up so quickly that it barely counts. They treat setbacks like flat tires. You don't throw away the car when you get a flat. You fix the tire and keep driving. And there's one more layer to this, one final truth about habits that ties everything together. You are not looking for perfection, you are looking for identity. Every time you come back after a miss, Every time you honor the commitment, even in a reduced form, even when no one is watching, even when you don't feel like it, you cast another vote for who you are. I am someone who comes back. I am someone who keeps going. I am someone who doesn't quit. That accumulation of votes, quiet, patient, day after day, is the most powerful thing a human being can do. Not because it produces any single dramatic result, but because it builds the most valuable thing in existence, complete trust in yourself. And that trust, the knowledge that when you say you're going to do something, you actually do it, is the foundation of everything. Every dream you have, every goal you set, every version of yourself you're trying to become. It all rests on that foundation. Build it. One small habit at a time. The final transformation. Here is the thing nobody tells you about change. It doesn't announce itself. There's no dramatic moment where the music swells and you suddenly become a new person. No singular morning where you wake up transformed. No climactic breakthrough where everything clicks into place all at once. Change happens the way sunrise happens, so slowly you barely notice, until suddenly the whole world looks different. And you will miss days. That is not a warning. That is a promise. You will have weeks where it feels like nothing is working, where the habit disappears, the motivation evaporates, and the gap between who you are and who you want to be feels impossibly wide. That is not failure. That is the process. The goal was never perfection. The goal was never to become some flawless, endlessly disciplined machine who never struggles. The goal, the only goal that ever actually mattered, is return, coming back again and again and again. Because your life is not built by your biggest decisions, it is built by your repeated ones. The ordinary Tuesday decisions nobody applauds. The 6 a.m. decision no one sees. The decision to close the app, put down the cigarette, eat the better meal, take the extra step, when you're tired, when you're stressed, when every part of you is looking for an excuse, those decisions, those quiet, invisible, unremarkable decisions, that is where your future lives. James Clear ends Atomic Habits with an image that has stayed with me. He describes a man, a golfer, who has played the same course his entire life. Every year he gets a little better. Not dramatically, not overnight, just a little. One tiny improvement here, one adjusted grip there, one better decision on a difficult hole. 50 years pass. He looks back at the golfer he was when he started. He is unrecognizable to that person, not because of any single moment of mastery, but because of 50 years of tiny, compounded improvements, each one almost invisible, all of them together, everything. That is what you are building. Not a dramatic transformation story, not an overnight success, not a highlight reel, a life, quiet, compounded, real. So let me leave you with this. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems, which means the question is not, what do I want? The question is, what system am I willing to build and maintain, day after day in the dark, when no one is watching, when I don't feel like it, that will eventually, inevitably, deliver the life I actually want? Start there. Start small. Start today. One tiny habit, one small vote, one invisible degree of change. Because one day, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, maybe not this year, but one day you will look back at the life you have built, and you will realize that the person you have become was built quietly, brick by brick, habit by habit, in the most ordinary moments of the most ordinary days, and it will have been worth every single one of them. This is Atomic Habits. This is how lives change, one tiny step at a time.